Go. I'm going to record this now. All right. Here we are, everyone.
Haha.
Welcome once again. This is another Tuesday night call with Dana Stringham, myself, and my wife, Autumn.
Hi.
And we love doing this. This is super fun. For those of you who joined us last week, we've talked a little bit about the beginning of how everything got started.
That's right.
This whole thing, right?
So,
with EMPowerplus and everything, really.
We're doing a multi-episode storytelling called The Price of Discovery, and it's the EMPowerplus miracle. And of course, that story began with our family, with my dad, my mom. So episode 1, we covered a whole bunch of things, but episode 2, here we go. So last week we
Where's
left
episode
you.
1, first of all? I guess it's
on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, YouTube.
Yep. Autumn Stringham, YouTube. Or Renova Worldwide, I think, also posted it.
Yeah, I think we said part 1.
Yeah, and you can see it. It's The Price of Discovery, the EMPowerplus miracle. So look at Autumn Stringham, YouTube, no H in Stringham.
Awesome.
Okay, last week we left you with me in a bedroom, terrified out of my mind because he was trying to kill me, obviously, using some of the medication that he was given. Where he was allowed to use it to sedate me when I started doing things like taking apart furniture with a belt sander, which I was doing.
But this particular incident that you're talking about was sort of an out of control fit, I guess I want to say, like a fit of rage, of anxiety, or whatever it was. It was actually quite frightening. And so the doctor had told me and told you that this medicine in particular was one that you could use in sort of an acute situation like that, when things were kind of getting out of control, whatever, just to kind of, level things out again and get the situation under control.
Yeah, it was a benzodiazepine medication called Ativan. Yep. And it was something that was used to just like take me down some.
Yep.
And I used it every day because every day with rapid cycling, I needed something to take me down. But in this case, you were needing to use a lot more and to try to get me safe enough to take me to the hospital was basically, so I wouldn't throw myself out of a moving vehicle.
Yeah.
Or do something.
I think maybe because I came to you, with this kind of not a handful, but, a few different pills, and they're just very tiny, and said, here, I need you to take these. It was kind of like, no, you're trying to kill me with this much. And really it wasn't that at all. I mean, the dose that they'd given you was actually a small amount, but you could have taken up to like 5 of these, for instance, without any trouble. So anyway.
Right. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So I got on the phone. I locked him out of the bedroom and I got on the phone with my dad. And my memory is me crying and saying that Dana was trying to kill me. My dad was immediately defensive for Dana and told me that I needed to just get safe and get myself to the hospital. And that's about the time that Dana broke into the bedroom and things got a little physical.
Well, and that's where, again, physical as in you got to take control. I felt like I had to take control of the situation for your own safety. Like it was one of those things where it's like, what are we going to do here? I got to get you to the hospital.
What was that like for you?
Well, terrifying, obviously. I mean, you don't want to, it's terrifying to watch somebody that you really love and care for and the mother of your child at this point going through something so horrible, so terrifying. I mean, you can see it in your eyes. And I think that's the most terrifying part is to see somebody who's suffering and to see it in their eyes in particular, right? Whatever else they might be doing on the side, but to see that sort of panic in the eyes is what I saw with you. And it was like, oh my gosh, we got to do something here. So of course, the only thing that I knew or that whatever was to just go to the hospital and, see how they could manage the situation at that point.
That was a brutal time.
It's a little bit scary.
Yeah. The one thing I remember about that conversation, I don't know, man, that's such a real trigger for me when I think about that. Like seriously, it gets me feeling hard. Sick.
Yeah.
But the one thing I remember about that conversation in particular was me being just furious with my father. And I said some terrible things to him, but he told me that he had gotten my brother off of his psychiatric medication and onto, I did not know even how to explain it. Some crazy natural thing. And you got to understand, my dad had been trying a lot of things over 2 years from the time my mother committed suicide to this point. He was desperate to try to solve things for me and for my brother.
Yeah.
And so he had tried a lot of stuff, Like it wasn't news that he was trying something new.
No, and really, we'd only heard bits and pieces of it, like,
Mm.
that he was trying this nutrient or this, we knew that there was something to do with pigs and all this kind of stuff. But honestly, I was kind of checked out of that whole, thing, because I was more concerned about you and what was happening with us and
Yeah.
our family, and, to worry about what your dad was doing with pig feet, basically, right? I
Yeah.
wasn't that concerned.
That was in my head. I was like,
whatever.
what does this have to do with pigs? And
Yeah.
also, so we didn't
Like, for real,
we
right?
didn't really understand my dad's side of the story until much, much later.
Yeah, because we were busy again, in our
Yeah.
own little thing there, right?
So you get me off to the hospital in the back seat of a car with the child lock on the door. And by then I'm fairly medicated. I go in on another suicide watch,
Yeah.
right? I
Yep.
was in there for a while.
Mhm.
We'd already checked out a long-term care facility. And at this point, you were just kind of pulling out all the stops. So you made an arrangement with my dad.
Well, and the arrangement I made, once you got out of the hospital, we kind of got you stabilized once again. And I think you came out of there on a couple more meds.
I was on a
something
5-med cocktail at
by
that
the time
point.
that, yeah. So that was sort
Yeah.
of the I don't know. I don't want to say rock bottom, but it was pretty.
It was feeling like rock bottom for me.
Yeah, because it kind of felt like, okay, here's all these medicines, and the doctor's like, don't rock the boat. Just get her on this stuff. We might have to tweak some stuff and go back and forth, but this is going to be okay. We're going to work this out. And so anyway, upon condition of you getting out of the hospital, sort of had to provide 24-hour care or supervision for you, for our young son at that time.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that I was working at a job that didn't permit me for this particular week to be there for you, for the 24-hour period kind of thing, right?
Right.
Because sometimes I would take you over to my mom's house, and she would watch you when I had to work certain shifts. And anyway, it just didn't work out. So yeah, talk to your dad, made the arrangements to drive you down to where he was living, 5 hours south of us, I guess, and have you stay there for the week.
Right. So you dropped me off in a pretty medicated stupor.
Yep.
I don't have a lot of memories.
sleep.
I remember I went to church, and I remember being super embarrassed because I was doing my flapping thing in church. And I remember in the inside dying of embarrassment for my dad as he had to escort me out of the chapel, which had to be super embarrassing for him in front of his entire community, because there's the crazy Stephan family again, like making a scene, right?
Yeah.
We'd already made quite a scene in the community with the suicide, with my brother's behavior, and then just kind of like falling all to pieces. And they were just new to the community. It was rough. So I'm sure that he was just mortified, but he had a psychiatric nurse friend, a man who he had come stay at the house. And you didn't even know what was going on, did you?
I had no idea. In fact, Tony never said that, hey, when she gets down here, guess what? I'm going to start feeding her this concoction
Guess what?
stuff.
I've got a psych nurse friend that's going to team up.
He didn't tell me that at all. And of course, he just, yeah, no problem. We'll take care of it. It's going to be fine. And I think he had enough sense at that point to know that if he, had said something to me, that I probably would have tried in my, stupid way to block it. No way, you're not doing that, whatever.
Right.
So looking back, obviously, I'm glad that didn't happen.
Okay. So the part that Dana doesn't know about is that in the first few days, my dad used, again, the medication that was used as a sedative for me, Ativan. They administered it in a pretty high dose, I think, to keep me super sedate. And then took me, force fed me liquid and powders and pills and things in the combination that he'd been feeding to my brother for about a month at that point.
Right.
And in very short order, I stopped certain symptoms. So I think it was like day 2 or 3. And I wrote about this in more detail in my book, where I went back in my journals and took a look at it. I don't even remember the timeline perfectly anymore. I'd have to literally go back to see. But over a couple of days, I stopped having that massive hole in my chest, which was one of the most bothersome symptoms that happened daily for me.
Right.
And stopped with the major super scary psychotic stuff. Like I wasn't hearing things, and I felt like I was kind of closed up, which felt really comfortable for me. And very quickly, my dad noticed that when I was doing good in the morning, and then I think it was day 3, I took my medication and I was just wrecked for the rest of the day. And so he insisted that I just stop. And I think that's where he had to tell you.
that he was,
what he was doing.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
again, this is on a phone call, I guess. Right. And so, I was talking to you too. And so, I'd heard after even a couple of days, I could just hear it, in your voice that you were sounding better, and so on some level, I'm like, wait, man, this is kind of cool, hopeful that this is sounding pretty neat. But then he tells me that, he's basically trashed the meds that you were on. And so
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, wait a second here. What? Nobody had, said anything about, trashing meds, stuff like that. You want to feed her pig feed, that's one thing, but, take her off the medicines, no way, kind of thing. Right. So I was really concerned about that. Again, the doctor, you just got out of there.
Yeah.
And the doctor's like, don't rock the boat, blah. And I had no intention of rocking the boat. And I don't think you had any intention of
No,
rocking
I was really upset about it, but at the same time, I couldn't deny the fact that almost instantaneously I was feeling different.
Yeah, feeling
and
better, right?
Extra
more clear-headed.
And extra sedated. I didn't like feeling sedated because I was kind of enjoying feeling calmer.
Right.
So for me, the biggest turnaround was when my dad noticed that I had a shower and that I was able to be fully unclothed for that shower. And I hadn't done that for a while. Part of my paranoia toward the end of my illness was like pretty serious terror about a lot of things. And part of my advancement from like rapid cycling bipolar 1 into schizophrenic tendencies was a lot to do with terror. I was terrified a lot,
right.
And felt like I was extremely vulnerable. And so I was not showering naked. And when I finally got cleaned up at my dad's place, that turned a corner for him. And he felt confident, even at that point. It was only a week in, but he felt confident enough to send me home. And we had made an arrangement. I wouldn't watch our son. He still had to go to daycare.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you work that out?
Well, and he came, I think we kind of drove, meet halfway kind of thing, and, pass you off, so to speak, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember, just talking to your dad and, still being super concerned, obviously, about the whole thing. And I think I remember him being like, well, she doesn't need these things anymore. Just take her off and stuff. And I was like, no, I think you were on one more medicine at that point. And I was like, I can't deny that she's doing better, but I'm still super concerned that, that things are going to turn around and go backwards again. Because on some level, we've kind of seen that, right? That's why the hospital visits, the extra drugs, all these kind of things. Because there'd be moments of really good stuff, and then inevitably things would go backwards. And then it was like, okay, well, let's get you on some more drugs. Basically, was the answer, right?
Right. Yeah. And things hadn't been like steady downhill or steady uphill. There was always ups and downs with bipolar. That's how it is, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And medication that seemed to work for a little while and then stopped. So we actually didn't even know what we were in for, because I stopped taking cold turkey a few medications. So like Haldol, Rivotril, and Ativan.
Yep.
Right away. And I think when we figured out the Cogentin was only for the Haldol, it was a side effect for Haldol, we dropped that one.
Yep.
So I stopped taking all of those like within a day. And nobody knew what was coming, because by the time I got home, I was going into withdrawal.
And that's the thing, obviously we've learned a lot now, and this is never something
never
recommend or taught, but it was just our experience. It's kind of what happened. And we didn't realize the withdrawal thing. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. You certainly didn't know what was going on. And I don't think Tony knew anything about that either.
So describe what it's like to be a support person when someone that you love goes into withdrawal, someone that you sleep with and share a bed with. What was that like for you? Because I thought I was just having another psychotic break, but you saw it as something different. So describe what you saw.
Well, let me back up a little bit again, because I think it's important that people understand that, the reason why we didn't understand about withdrawal or whatever else is because we didn't educate ourselves necessarily on the medication she was taking. And the doctor certainly didn't say, hey, by the way, if she stops a certain medication, she's going to go through withdrawal. That was never said at any point. And I get it. The whole point was, you're going to be on these things, consider, for a lifetime, basically. So, you don't have to worry about withdrawal, but it was a serious thing. And so
also, we had no expectation that this other like pig pill stuff was even going to work.
Yeah. Why?
No expectation for it to work.
That's right. And so as you're going through withdrawal, and I didn't recommend or recognize it right away, but some of the symptoms, especially at night, the thrashing around, the restless legs, all that kind of stuff was something I hadn't seen before. It didn't seem to me like it was part of any illness that you'd been medicated for. So it's
What
kind of
about
like,
the
what is going on,
screaming
right?
though?
The screaming, the crying jags, whatever, all of this stuff was totally and completely out of the ordinary for what we'd seen to that point. And, so for me, that's what kind of clued me into, man, this looks like more like something like you're coming off crack cocaine or something, right?
So I think I remember you saying this looks like you had just been taking a psychology class, right? And didn't
Yeah.
you say like this looks like crack withdrawal?
Yeah, because it did. And I think especially like the restless legs, like your legs all night long, kicking and
Yeah,
thrashing and
well,
tearing the skin off my legs and whatever else, right?
sorry about that. I thrashed so hard in bed and so repeatedly that like I wore my ankles raw. They were bleeding.
Mine too. Yeah.
I'm sorry about your
All good.
ankles.
They healed up. but again, those are the kind of
Glad I
things.
can laugh about it now.
and again, we understand.
But the
a lot more about
vomiting,
that
the
now.
sweating, the screaming.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard to know at that point if I was just having a moment or if I was like going through withdrawal. And then you clued in and said, this looks like withdrawal.
And I think at that point, that's where I was kind of like, you know what? No way, man. We're done. You're not going back on that stuff.
Yeah, because I wanted
this
to.
This is awful. Yeah.
Well, I remember screaming, saying that I wanted a specific medication. Right. And then you're like, wait a second, you're acting like an addict.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it was just better to kind of push through because, even though I was still
it was not necessarily better. It was actually super dangerous.
It was.
But we didn't know it at the time.
No, we didn't know it. And again, even though I was skeptical about this, the pig stuff that you were taking actually working and doing its thing, I couldn't deny that it truly was helping. And I also couldn't deny that you were having some severe withdrawal symptoms from these medications. So it's like, you're not going back on the medication. So I'm going to hope and pray that this pig concoction works.
Withdrawal was super, super painful for me. And I think that that's one of the things that people don't understand.
Yeah.
Is that in choosing to do something alternative and choosing ultimately to do something that would be completely life altering for me and life restoring for me, it would eventually lead to us having 3 more children and keep our marriage, all the good things that have come from it. There was a period of time where it felt impossible.
Absolutely.
It was incredibly painful and terrifying. And something that I think most people don't experience to its fullest anymore because there's so much more understanding about how to safely withdraw from medication.
Yeah.
Doctors are generally on board with the process. If they feel like there's something else that might work for you, they understand loads of medication isn't necessarily a great long-term solution.
Right. And so they have protocols in place to safely come off things and
right.
whatever.
And,
right?
and as the research has been published about the pig pills, as it became an all-in-one product, eventually, and we'll get to that next episode. But
that's right.
as it became
almost out of time for this
I know, right? This is like so crazy.
Wow.
But as it came into an all-in-one, and then the researchers all around the world started picking it up, and all these pilot studies that have happened, and some placebo-controlled studies have been completed, and just seeing how things work, I think it's easier for a doctor now to get on board and say, you know what? Okay, actually, all this and the hospitalizations weren't really working for you, so maybe let's take a look at this thing. And I think that people can be more measured about it and more deliberate and a whole lot more careful. So I'm really glad for that progress over the last
25 years.
We're coming up on 25 years.
Yeah. And that's interesting to say all that too, because there really has been a tremendous, advancement in this whole thing right now. I mean, there really has, not just the work that True Hope and EMPowerplus has done, but doctors around the world and researchers around the world, right, that have been able to help people understand this process of withdrawal, whatever it is,
Yeah.
It's been incredible.
It's really actually really super incredible. And I think that there's a lot more information available. I remember a few months in, after stopping my last medication that I took, we weaned off real slow, remember?
Yeah. And
because we knew that one could cause seizures if I stopped it suddenly.
That, and honestly, it was kind of like a bit of a crutch, like
because you were scared.
wanting to really wanting to believe that this was going to be, the answer kind of thing, but also just kind of a little bit fearful too. Right. So let's hold on to this one little thing as a crutch.
So like super slowly and painfully coming off of this last medication off the Epival, and then kind of getting to this point of just finally the last day, March 28th, 1996.
Yeah. So
taking my last dose of medication.
That's amazing.
It's been a long time.
And especially when you consider that we were told that you would be on these medications for, the rest of your life. And so
We,
to
we were
suddenly
told
be
we would never have more children
right. Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
And we 3 more, and never ever going to get off medication, and probably like a super reduced lifespan, which we have yet to prove that I could actually live longer, but so far so good.
I'll take it. It's, whatever.
I'll take it.
And so, yeah. So anyway, we recognize what a major blessing it's been for us and for our family personally, but then also now over the 25 years that the thousands of others, individuals and families have been helped as well.
Yeah.
That's really what's most exciting. So, and the work continues, as you all know, with lightning and everything else. It's fantastic.
So next Tuesday, when we pick the story up again, you're going to find out the same way that we found out what the heck my dad was doing with all this pig feed. and how that even happened. It was very strange story.
Pretty cool.
Pretty
so
darn
I guess
cool.
we'll go back into the development of that a little bit.
Well, yeah, but we'll tell it the way
story.
that we found out, because we didn't find out until months later. So I was literally off medication and improving daily and just kind of going through this process. And then we heard, I think the first time I heard the whole story was when I saw it in a newspaper.
That's probably true. Because once again, we were kind of focused on our own issues.
Yeah, we
weren't
kind of had our
necessarily
own garbage.
But he had a whole nother thing going on that was very intense and very deliberate in how that whole thing came together, the whole concoction. So that'll be an interesting story for next time.
My dad's a miracle.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Okay, you're going to hit that thing. I'm going to hit this thing.
I will.
And we will see you all. Whoa, we will see you all next Tuesday. Thank you for joining us with us.
7 o'clock.
It's always fun. So see you all again next time, you guys. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.